Hello, this is Nathan, and welcome to Call for Salt. Today I'm going to be reading an article that really just popped out to me just as I was going to going through my normal news check, which I don't do every day, honestly. But this particular article just set off warning bells, alarms, and everything. And this is something that I've kind of mentioned and talked about a little bit in some of my videos, even though I haven't had a video specifically on this. This is something that I think if we don't stop this in its tracks now, it is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back with a lot of Christians on whether how seriously they take politics, how serious they take, you know, not just preaching the gospel, not just, spiritualizing everything and looking and seeing what kind of politics was below them as dirty as something that is divisive and breaks the unity and all of that. I think if we don't stop this issue in its tracks and it gets traction, it really starts taking off and it starts affecting people all over. People are going to wake up. And you may have people in your church that you just, if you're watching this and you agree with the main idea of my channel, waking up and speaking the truth, and even in the realm of politics, not being afraid of that, because that is directly connected to the gospel, our gospel witness, but it affects people's lives. It has real world consequences, and people are hurt and abused when we don't take a stand, even in the political realm. So what's going to happen is if this issue gets traction, if this issue is not stopped in its tracks, then it's going to take over, and it's going to be too late for a lot of people. A lot of people, when they wake up, it's going to be too late. So here's I'm putting this out there. I want to read this article and I want to comment on it, and I'm actually going to read some of the comments. There's You can only really find this article on conservative news sites. That's what I've looked through. I first found it on Fox News, and then I found it on the Christian Post, a well-known Christian news site. And then there's some other places, Washington, I believe the Washington Examiner, and other places, conservative outlets. However, I think you're going to be pretty surprised when you read some of the comments, and whose side's comments are on which publication or on which news article. So this is going to be interesting. I hope that you take something from this. I hope that this puts a fire under you to be more vigilant, to watch your kids more, to wake people up, to talk about this, encourage your pastor to talk about these kind of things more, and it just should put a fire under all of us as Christians, to that we should not be lazy or distracted or guilted into silence anymore. We need to take a stand, because it's no less than our own children that could be at stake. Before I go any further and read this article, I just want to say, when I was talking to my wife about making this video, I just mentioned I was going to make it, didn't really have any second thoughts about making it, but my wife said, and this is understandable. This is very understandable, especially women are more thinking along these lines. But my wife was like, do you really think you should make this? You don't want to put a target on your back, on our backs, on our children. And it made me think for a second, because that is a very, if the wrong people here look at this and they decide, hey, here's an enemy, here's somebody that's trying to expose this evil thing that we're trying to do, let's take them out. Let's go after their kids, his kids. I feel like on one hand that's very, I need to take that very seriously, and I do. But on the other hand, if we can't talk about this now, if this is going to have this kind of chilling effect where I can't even talk about it when our country is still theoretically a free country, before laws are changed and everything that will make it possible for this to happen, then if I don't do it now, when will I be able to do it? Who is going to stand up and speak if everybody's afraid of this? This should not have a chilling effect, but it already is, and I'm afraid it will have that to you. So my thing is way out. If your child's in a predicament, or I should say in a vulnerable position where you could be targeted because of what I'm going to talk about today, I don't believe that my children really are, or they're more inoculated than other children. But weigh that out for yourself. But we need people to speak up on this before it's too late. And I'll tell you one thing: if that ever happens to my children, if this ever happens to my children, I will be fighting at every angle possible to make them wish that they never, ever, ever tried to do this to my children. And it is, I mean, I will sue them. I will go through every possible litigation. I will do everything possible, everything legally possible to take care to get my children back. And that's what this is about: losing your actual children, the state taking your children. And why, in this particular situation, why did this particular state, take someone's children? They took their children because they had a religious belief that they did not want to use their teenager came out as their underage teenager came out as trans. I believe the boy was 16 at the time, and he declared himself to be a girl. He came out as trans, and he wanted his parents to refer to him as a girl. They would not agree to lie to him. They would not agree to aid in that delusion. And so, as a result, he was taken away from his parents and kept away from his parents. And that is what that happened in the state. It's not California. You could guess all day and you probably wouldn't come up with this state. It's not California. It's not Massachusetts. It's not, you can name every liberal state. It's not a blue state. It's a solid red state. It's a state that neighbors my state of Ohio. It's Indiana. This happened in Indiana. If it happened in Indiana, it can happen anywhere. It can happen in any county with any child protection services that is corrupt enough to do this. This is why it's important for us to get ourselves down and dirty in that mud of politics. And I'm just so tired of people saying, "Oh, that's a lost cause," or "It's too corrupt. Both parties are just as bad. Let's just vote third party and let the crazies win every time. Let the Democrat crazies win every time." And just so the most radical laws get passed, the most radical people get put in positions of power, and we end up having things like this happen. Now this was where, corrupt, you had to be like liberal people doing this. Only liberal people could sleep at night to make these kind of decisions, because these weren't elected into these were bureaucratic people in child protective services and courts that made decisions to take away the child. Now these courts were probably appointed by Democrat lawmakers at one point, and some red states can still get those liberal judges. It happens a lot. You can't convince me for all the money in the world that every single person involved in taking away this child was a Democrat or at least a liberal-leaning Republican. You just can't convince me that. And I bet you 90+% of them were Democrats. You can talk all day about how the Republican Party's corrupt and how both parties have their problems, blah, blah, blah. But I'm sorry. There's one party that respects freedom. They still respect freedom. They still vote that way, and almost all the time. You get your rhinos, but even them, you look at their voting records, for the most part, they're keeping out the crazy stuff. I mean, the radical, nutsy stuff like this. Let me read this article to you. It's not too long, okay? It hurts. It really this angers me. It does, and it should anger every single one of us. Indiana parents. This is the title of it in Fox News. It was yesterday that this article came out. Title is Indiana Parents Warn Nation After Child is Removed from Home for Improper Pronoun Usage. And they put in quotes, can happen anywhere. Yeah, if it can happen in Indiana, it can happen anywhere. The parents ask the Supreme Court to hold Indiana responsible for removing transgender child from their home. So I believe the child was 16 at the time. After further research with other articles, um, and they did not get custody, as far as I'm from what I understand. They never got custody back of their child. They lost their child for 2 years. The child is now 18 and appears to be separated from the home. He probably, now that he's 18, he's probably moved away from his parents, and they no longer have custody of him, which is sad because in that 2 year time, if the courts had done the right thing, they could have gotten him help from good Christian counselors or people like that, and he could still be in the home. He could be in a much better place, and have a close relationship with his parents, and be not be representing himself as a girl rather than a boy. But here it is. It says a Catholic couple in Indiana is asking the Supreme Court to hold this state accountable. Now, the Supreme Court of the United States, the highest court of the land. That's not the Indiana Supreme Court, but the highest court of the land. I read some other articles just to confirm that, but yes, they're asking the Supreme Court to hold the state accountable for keeping their child out of their home after they decline to use his chosen name and pronouns. In MC and JC v. versus Indiana Department of Child Services, Mary and Jeremy Cox are appealing to the Supreme Court after they were investigated by Indiana officials for refusing to refer to their son using pronouns in a name consistent with his biological sex. Beckett is pursuing the case on behalf of the Coxes. That's their attorney, arguing state courts allowed Indiana to keep the child from living in his parents' home due to their disagreement with the child's gender identity because of their religious beliefs. Can I just say this? It doesn't matter whether someone has shouldn't matter whether someone has religious beliefs or not, for being the reason that they don't want to teach their kids a lie. They don't want to aid and abet their child's mental delusion. That no doubt a school or a counselor or somebody had put this into his head, or if peers, the culture today. It doesn't matter. Like if some, I mean, it should matter. We should have religious freedom, and that for that reason alone. But just for the reason alone that they're the parents and they have the right to teach their kid what they believe is right, and they don't want to lie. What atheist person wants to lie to their kid? I mean, if we're supposed to believe the science, right? Atheists are big on science, and if they believe the science that a boy can't be a girl, then why would they want to teach their kid anything different? Why would they want to lie to their child and aid in this mental delusion? A lot of them wouldn't. I would suspect. A lot of non-religious people. Okay, so Beckett. Okay, let's see here. Notably, upon completing the investigation, the state determined the allegations of abuse against Mary and Jeremy were unsubstantiated. So after the state did their investigation, the abuse allegations were unsubstantiated, but get this, they still argued that the disagreement over gender identity was distressing to their child. So if the child says they're distressed emotionally or whatever, it's unsafe. It's unsafe to be with their own parents because their own parents won't call them the pronouns that is opposite to their gender, to their actual biological sex. That's insane. Can you believe we've come to this? It's unsafe, so they won't release the child. Let's see here. I'm sorry to get lost here in a minute where I was for a second. Sorry. Lori Wyndham, vice president and senior counsel at Beckett, told Fox News Digital that no parent should ever have to endure what Mary and Jeremy have been forced to go through. Absolutely. Imagine how heart-wrenching that would be. Imagine how just absolutely just maddening that would be to feel helpless. Your child is taken from your home because you have to choose between your conscience and your deeply held beliefs, or your child, and your child is taken from your home, and they're convinced that of a lie, and you won't go along with it, so you are deemed unsafe to take care of your own children. She said keeping a child away from loving parents because of their religious beliefs, even when the state admits there was no abuse or neglect, is wrong and it's against the law. She said the court should take this case and make clear that other states can't take children away from their ideological disagreements. So if a state has an ideology on gender, they don't have the power willy-nilly just to go in through Child Protective Services or any other agency and say, oh, we're going to make the unelected bureaucratic decision to take your child away because we don't believe it's safe. And we got the courts, we know who the judges are, we know they'll back us up. So we got this in the bag. Sorry, parents, you're out of luck. Sorry, parents, you don't know what's best for your child. Your child is unsafe to be in your home. We're taking your child, and we can take him as long as we want. It actually even gets worse here. In addition, in 2019, Mary and Jeremy's son told them that he identified as a girl, but in line with their Catholic religious beliefs that God created human beings with an immutable sex, male or female, they did not believe in referring to him using pronouns and a name inconsistent with his biology. In addition, the Cox believed their son was struggling with underlying mental health conditions, including an eating disorder, so they sought therapeutic care for both. So they're going to probably a counselor, psychologist, psychiatrist. They're getting him help. He's got an eating disorder, maybe it's a mental condition. Chances are, the first report, the person that reported them to Child Protective Services was either a counselor that he went to for this, or someone in his school, especially if it was a public school. But here it is. But in 2021, Indiana officials began investigating the Coxes. So started in 2019. They tried to get him help. In 2021, Indiana officials began investigating the Coxes after a report found that they were not referring to their child by his preferred gender identity, removing the teen from their custody and placing him in a gender-affirming home. So they not only took him away, but they put him in a home where the people are liberal and probably, I'm sure, have a whole different worldview and are gender-affirming. They're going to help keep this indoctrination alive. This indoctrination that he learned from his peers, probably, but probably his school, probably very likely his counselors, and every single one of them were lying to him. His parents stood alone, cared about him, and had the courage to still stand and not bend, and still love him enough to tell him the truth. And he's taken away and put in a gender-affirming home. Just absolutely just beyond the pale. Despite the unsubstantiated claims of abuse, they claimed the Coxes made the child's eating disorder worse, even though. So they claimed they made so much distress that his eating disorder got worse. But here it says, even though it worsened after he was removed and placed in a transition affirming home. It got worse after. In theory, he should be happier, he should be safe, emotionally stable, and all of that. He's being affirmed, but it gets worse. He's getting worse. Who's making him worse? If we didn't teach all this nonsense and trash in schools in the first place, this kid may have had mental disorders that he could get help with. But he wouldn't go to calling himself something a completely different gender or sex to make himself feel better. A lot of these kids are just doing it because they want to feel worth something and they want to get attention in their own way. It's sad. That they see this as a viable outlet to get attention and to have some kind of identity that's not their own because they don't feel worthy of themselves. And they need help. There's kids that need help out there. He could have gotten help in the right way if all of this never started in the first place. I'm sorry, but it makes me mad. They're indoctrinating kids, and kids are falling for this all over the country, and now they're starting to be taken away from their own parents. It's just disgusting. I'm going to keep reading. The Indiana Department of Child Services declined a Fox News digital request for comment. Of course they did. They're not going to comment. They're going to comment with Fox News, saying DCS does not comment on ongoing litigation. Of course not. This is what every parent is afraid of, Mary and Jeremy Cox said in a press release. We love our son and wanted to care for him, but the state of Indiana robbed us of that opportunity by taking him from our home and banning us from speaking to him about his gender. We are hopeful that the justices will take our case and protect other parents from having to endure the nightmare we did. And they added, when the case was first heard in trial court, Indiana officials argued the child should be in a home where she, quote, she is accepted for who she is, and restricted the Cox's visitation time to a few hours once a week. Are you kidding me? Which barred them from speaking to him about their religious views on human sexuality and gender identity. Can't even speak to them what they believe, or this is behind why they chose why they're standing their ground, and why they won't lie to him, but they can't even talk to him about that. They can't even try to appeal to him. It's just to change his mind, really. Even though the court determined that the Coxes, get this, they determined that the Coxes were fit parents, it upheld the removal of their child, which was later upheld by the appeals court. So it was not only there, but it went to a higher appeals court in the state of Indiana, state appeals court. If this can happen in Indiana, it can happen anywhere, Wyndham said. Tearing a child away from loving parents because of their religious beliefs, which are shared by millions of Americans, is an outrage to the law, parental rights, and basic human decency. Absolutely. Let's take each one of those points here. It's an outrage to the law. It's bureaucracy and just unelected justices and bureaucracy taking these children away, making the decision by fiat because they feel like it, because that's their liberal ideology. It's not. There's no law. I can bet you anything. There's no law in Indiana saying that this can happen. No legislative doctrine of any kind. So it's an outrage to law. It's an outrage to parental rights and basic human decency. I mean, what matters to you more in life than your child? What matters to you more than protecting your child and loving your child and seeing that your child succeeds and has a productive and happy life? You want to do everything while you have them for 18 years of their life. You want to do everything you can to mold that child and lead that child and guide that child into the ways that are going to follow the Lord. They're going to be successful and happy and living a life of truth that honors God. When your child goes astray, when your child is compromised in some way, when your child is indoctrinated and lied to by the world, and they start going astray, you have every right and every responsibility before God to try to do everything you can, and especially when they're under your roof, to try to save your child. And when the state takes that responsibility away from you, they are stepping on your rights and your responsibilities given by God. You have to obey God over men. There's nothing more important. Very few things other than the Lord himself. There's really nothing more important to you than your children. What are you going to do when this comes to your state? What are you going to do? So, if this can happen in they said, It can happen in India. It can happen anywhere. It says, if the Supreme Court doesn't take this case, how many times will this happen to other families? That is such a good question. It's got to be taken. It's got to be taken by the Supreme Court. Otherwise, this would be precedent. And you imagine the liberal states, what they think they'll get away with. If Indiana can do it, oh my gosh, they'll start passing laws. Or they'll just instruct, their governors will just instruct the bureaucracy to just be fast and loose with taking children for these kinds of reasons. So that was the article. I want to read a few of the comments. And I scoured down through a lot of these comments, and to be honest with you, this is what kind of shocked me. The comments on Fox News, you got a fairly conservative readership, but they're not all Christians by any means. But then the vast majority of them were just like, this is an outrage, this is ridiculous, like cries for civil war. Like I'm not going there. I'm not talking about that or endorsing that. But I mean, people are fit to be tied on Fox News. There are some that try to get in there and say something different, and they're jumped all over by the conservatives, and rightfully so. I mean, this is a serious topic. But then you go to the Christian Post, which isn't super conservative Christian, but it's evangelical Christian, and I can't believe how many people are on there commenting. I'm guessing a lot of them are their regular readership, because not many liberals are going to start reading the Christian Post. But a lot of them are just like defending it. Or like, oh, it's not really a thing. There's got to be more to the story, and it's just like ridiculous. I'm just going to try to read some of these things. Okay, here's a few. Try not to get too mad. Okay. This seems more like something that would happen in New York or California, where I would never choose to raise my children. We are in real trouble when government thinks it's more effective at raising our children than parents. While abusive parents may be required to surrender its parental rights in some extreme cases, this is not one of them. I'm reading some of the comments that got the most likes. Let's see here. Here's one. Democrats haven't gotten anything right. I sure as don't trust them to raise our children. This is the globalists trying to destroy our country, and Democrats are working with them. Trump 2024, save our children. Let me say one thing about that. The only reason why we have a decent chance of the Supreme Court weighing in and stopping this nonsense in its tracks is because of one reason. I'm sorry. Oh my goodness. We elected Donald Trump. He gave us a right-leaning Supreme Court. I mean, all of the people, the Christians that are too good for Trump, too good to vote for him, and I know I don't like a lot of things about him, and I can say that till I'm blue in the face, and I can say I don't get excited about those things, or I even criticize those things, but it doesn't matter. These never Trumpers, they're not going to listen to that. They don't care. They're too good. They're too good for Trump. But when the child services comes knocking on your door, you're going to be flipping happy when the Supreme Court has made a law has stopped this stuff in its tracks, and they have no precedent to be able to do anything to take your children. You better be happy, and you better be thanking Trump, because Trump put in people who had common sense, and they're not perfect. I don't agree with all their decisions. They're too liberal for me. But they overturned Roe v. Wade. If they had the guts to overturn Roe v. Wade, I think they're going to weigh in and make the right decision on this. If they don't, that just is even more of a reason for us to vote for conservatives. Because if Clinton had won, I mean, every single one of them would have been a radical, and there's no way. I mean, we'd be up to here in crazy radical nonsense right now if we had a liberal Supreme Court. It is just, if that's not the best argument for voting for Trump again, I don't know what is. Supreme Court could be the only thing that saves the day on this. Here's some more. I'm just going to read a couple more here on Fox News. Here's one that drives me up the wall. I'm going to guess there's more going on than just incorrect pronouns. Well, you know what? I read this on a few different articles, and no, there was allegations of abuse or emotional abuse, emotional distress, and physical distress because they said he was not had an eating disorder, so they must not be taking care of it. Well, that was because he was distressed that they weren't affirming his pronouns. He wasn't eating. But they found it unsubstantiated in the courts later on. At any rate, it says it right there in both articles that I read. Come on, don't say there's more going on. You want to keep your head in the sand. That kind of attitude just, oh man, it grates on me. It grates on me. Let me see what else. I'll read one more. So are children going to be removed from parental responsibility anytime they feel distressed or disciplined or whatever the state decides is best? And in some state, somewhere, they're holding parents criminally liable for their child breaking the law. You can't have it both ways. Wanting parents to discipline their children or face liability, but then removing children from their custody because the state doesn't like how distressed a child gets when they try to parent them. May as well turn all our children over to the state. We kind of already do that when we send them to school. Absolutely. Okay, here, let me just say, this is my appeal to you. This is my my appeal to you to consider homeschooling. You might think that your kid's in a good public school, but they're going to get it subtly if they don't get it outright, overtly. And it's not good either way. And people can change. Teachers can change, counselors can change. You could be good one day and bad the next. You know that public schools attract liberals and Democrats like bees to honey. They love. I mean that's their place. That's their pad. Honestly, even when I was in school. And they finished the comment by saying, "May as well turn all our children over to the state." I already said that. The schools are never held liable for the damage they do, and that's true. They're never held liable. So they're going to the Supreme Court to try to stop this, to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. But I think they're also suing and they're wanting reparations. They're wanting people to lose their jobs and wanting people to be punished, and they rightfully should, for making these decisions. These radicals, these liberals, they're beyond liberals. These radical, progressive, socialists. They're about tyranny. They don't care. They have their utopian mindset of what they believe the world should look like, the ideology that they stick to like glue, and if anything gets in their way, too bad. They'll run roughshod over it. So if you're a parent and you got old, quote unquote, old-fashioned ideas that doesn't allow the child to be liberated to any kind of sexual anarchy, to be in the sexual anarchy of the day and live any little way they want to destroy their lives. If you're a parent that wants to put a roadblock and wants to try to stop that and save your child, you better get out of the way, because they're going to run roughshod over you. I'm sorry. You don't think it's that bad? It's happened in Indiana. It can happen anywhere. And you know what? California has some crazy stuff. Laws saying that basically they can take away if there's a custody battle between a mom and a dad, and the child's saying that they have gender dysphoria and they feel like they're a girl instead of a boy, or vice versa, they'll automatically consider that abusive, and they'll give the child to the other parent that affirms the transgender identity that's opposite to their biological sex, because they're calling it abuse. And that's just the next step, is to be like, okay, if we hear of the child being in a home with both parents and they don't affirm that, we can go in and take them out. You don't think that's the next step in California? You want to see the crazy laws that they have? It's insane. It's insane. And that is just one of their just insane laws. We cannot play footsies with unity anymore. With we just need to love our neighbors and be unified with them. Democrat, Republican, in our churches, it's okay. We're all brothers and sisters in Christ. It's just politics. We all disagree and it gets messy, and but like what in our church, it's like we're not going to bring those things up because heaven forbid we divide over issues of abortion until birth, or electing officials who will literally take away your child, judges and legislators and people that appoint judges to those positions. I mean, governors, and you know, heaven forbid that we just cause disunity because we don't want to talk about these things in the church because we're supposed to all be about the gospel. Yet these things are happening in our community, and we talk about loving and being a loving example in our community, and da 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 da, and protecting the innocent, and standing for what we say we're pro-life, but we really don't go any further and talk about anything or other issues, and we don't connect the dots to say, hey, you have no business as a Christian voting for Democrats because every single one of these people are Democrats. Republicans don't do this kind of stuff. And if you find a Republican that does it, it's probably in the Northeast where there's virtually no difference between some of the Republicans and Democrats. It's very, very rare to find Republicans in almost every part of the country that are going to go to radical, crazy lengths. I mean, they might be rhinos, they might be feckless, they might be cowards, they might be they might be the turtle like Mitch McConnell and just a spineless guy. But I tell you one thing, they keep out the crazy stuff when the votes come out for that stuff. Mitch McConnell actually was instrumental in tirelessly working to get all of Trump's conservative judges nominated. I mean, he nominated more. It was a record. So at least Mitch McConnell was good for something. I mean, these Democrats, you'd have something totally opposite, just completely off the rails. You want that? Do you hate Trump so much? Do you think you're better so much to allow something like that to happen? To allow it to get that far? Where's your line in the sand before you say, I got to speak out. I got to start really voting strategically and caring like that Democrats don't get in any places of power because these people are crazy. These people are insane. These people are they hate God, they hate you, they hate your children, and they will do or they claim they love their children, but they think they can raise your children better than you, and they will do everything they can, if given the opportunity, to take your children from you. That's where it goes. That's where it leads. What are you going to do then? Are you going to live in a state where you're under constant threat of that? I mean, are you going to move to what do you do then? You move to a very conservative state where you don't see that happening? Well, it happen in Indiana. You get your wrong bureaucracy in there, and you might see that happen in Mississippi. Honestly. And then if Democrats get elected on national level and they make laws like this, national laws, state laws aren't going to matter much at that point. What are you going to do? Run to the hills, live off the grid, and raise your family so your children don't get? I mean, this is how real life this gets. These are the kind of things that you got to think about because these are your kids. Like I feel like my kids are more incubated because they're not in a school they're in a homeschool public school, which is a lot more toned down what they're learning, the nonsense that they're going to get. They don't have the counselors and all that, but it's way more toned down, and we're on it. We're able to like monitor it a lot closer, and our children are very serious for God, and they're not in a place where we're gonna have to be like, oh, you're denying your kid because they want to be X, Y, and Z, and we're not at that place. Our kids are not in that, but like. Some of you are. Some of you are in your kids are in school and they're getting indoctrinated, and you might not even know about it. Go to your teachers. Go to the teachers. Go to the school. Find out exactly what they're learning. If they're not upfront with you, and if you're not completely satisfied that they're in a safe environment and they're not being indoctrinated, that they don't have a parental respectful, where they're not going to bring that kind of stuff up. If you don't feel 100% safe, you need to pull them out. Because this is where it's going. This is where it's going. unless it's stopped. We need good, strong conservatives in, and if we can't get the most conservatives, start voting R down the ticket, for crying out loud. Stop being so freaking picky that you can't vote for a guy because his last name is Trump, who you know is going to make the right decisions on these things. Think about your children. I want to read one more thing. Maybe you'll stay with me, maybe you won't. This has been a long video. It's a lot longer than I thought. But the Christian Post, they wrote an article that was almost identical. It's very different in a few ways, just wording it different. But the Christian Post, there's just one or two I just wanted to read. I feel sorry for this child who has no doubt been traumatized by his parents forcing their gender ideology on her. Remember, it's a boy. It's a biological boy. Is this a Christian Post person that claims to be a Christian? That is one of their readers? Or is this a troll? I would love to know. And you got some people pushing back on that, so that's good. But stuff like this. There was my favorite down here. My favorite, I say that sarcastically. This is one we saw this kind of reaction, if I can find it, in if not, I'm going to paraphrase what they said, because this is one I really want to highlight, because we saw these kind of reactions in the COVID situation. Let's see here. Okay, here we go. Okay. I'm going to go down a little tangent on this one, because I hate this reasoning. I hate this response. Every time those of us who are trying to raise alarm bells, we see something bad, and we're trying to raise alarm bells, and you got these people that are just like trying to tone it down, and because I know better than you do, I have experience. Okay, so listen to this. I agree. This person says, I agree with what Jacob is saying here. My father worked in CPS, Child Protective Services, and always emphasized that they did everything they could to keep the child with the family, and that if possible, this provides the best outcome. I would be extremely surprised if simple religious disagreements were enough for people to file abuse and neglect reports, and then for CPS to agree with those reports during their investigation, and then for prosecutors to further agree and file charges. If the child was indeed removed for a simple disagreement, then this case does sound wrong to me, but I'm guessing there's more to it. I wish I could find more information on this case from liberal outlets, but it seems like only conservative ones are reporting on it. Yeah, I wonder why, because liberals don't want to expose this stuff. They don't want this coming to light. So it's tough to get information on both sides. Every news article I saw referred to the child as he and son, which no liberal or likely even neutral source would have done. It's true. I did see that the child is 18 now in the Denver Gazette, and it sounds like this could be why the child is still separated, but maybe not. Tough to be sure. You know what gets me? The first part of what they're saying. My father worked in CPS. Therefore, that gives me a leg to stand on more than the rest of you. I have somebody who's an expert. I know someone who's an expert. So therefore, I have, not only do they probably have a bias because they know someone that's close to them that works in it, they're leaning on this argument of authority because supposedly this person knows more. This particular CPS office would never do it for that reason. There had to be more of the reason. You know what? We heard this during COVID. Oh, trust the experts. Or, you hear a lot of nurses or God, forgive me if I'm not trying to attack you if you're a nurse, but if you're a nurse that came out of COVID and was like, we need to trust the science. This is science, and this is what the experts are saying. So let's just, you just need to accept. Oh, we see all these people with COVID come in. This is such a dangerous thing. It's horrible. How many people actually died from COVID versus the flu? How many of those were actual flu or other health-related issues that they marked down as COVID? There were so many holes. There were so many. The statistics were weird even at the beginning. Why people would just automatically assume this is the most dangerous thing ever. But you got people coming out like, oh well, I have more to say on this. You should listen to me more because I work in a hospital, or I'm a nurse, or I know an immunologist, or I read an article by an immunologist. And they would just, here's this person saying, it's my father. My father worked in CPS, and so this could never happen. There's got to be more to it. No, no, no. I'm sorry. There's just too many stories around the country of these kinds of things happening because somebody is in a freaking position of power, and they are a liberal ideologue radical that just just has a disdain for conservatives and Christianity, and they'll do anything they can to take good kids out of good homes. And they've done it over and over again. And it was already said that this was unsubstantiated. It's like, oh well, we can't find liberal articles that are saying the same thing. So because it's just conservative articles, like Fox News has no credibility or something. Like just because it's conservative articles, I don't know if I can take it that these are unsubstantiated claims, and that the court officially said, like, why would they lie that the court said that they found no abuse? Why would they lie? Why would they lie about that? That could be so easily debunked by going to court records. It's just ridiculous. Don't appeal. Don't have this elitist mindset where you appeal to your job because you have I'm sorry, I just think people just have a pride in their own job. So if there's something related to their job that they can comment on to look good, to look like they know more on a controversial issue, they're going to weigh in and they're going to try to settle it for other people. I'm sorry, people have a mind and a brain of their own. People have a heart and a moral conscience of their own. In this case, I had a brain to say, hey, the statistics were saying that half of 1% of people that got COVID were dying of it, and that included, I believe that included even the older people and the people that had high risk factors for their health already. Like, so like, is it worth taking an experimental shot for that when you're middle age or young and you have very 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 little risk? And they're saying, oh, everyone should have it. Like, you need to make sure to stop the spread, and you need to make sure you're endangering everybody else, and don't go to church and all these other things. I mean, I'm looking at the numbers, and then I'm looking at someone saying, I'm an expert, then you should take it for sure. I mean, it's immoral not to take it. Or because I know, because I work in a hospital, or I'm this or that. I'm sorry. That doesn't fly with me. I use my brain. I look at a lot of sources, and then I make a decision I weigh the risks and I make the decision. And I have the freedom to make that decision. Now, I could have been in a position where in a company where I would have lost my job and I wouldn't have taken it. I was in a small enough company where they had less than the 50 employees or whatever, where I wouldn't lose my job if I didn't take the shot. But like, a lot of people lost their jobs because the government's heavy hand came down and tried to force people to take it. It's just absolutely, and a lot of these people, all of these experts and all these people agreed with it because, there's more going on. We know better because, we're in that position. We're in a position closer to the health field or whatever. I mean, I'm sorry, I could go on and on and on. This is a bit of a rant for me, this whole video, 48-minute rant. But my goodness, if nothing else matters to you, we're not talking about salt and light issues as directly as abortion or like the homosexual LGBT issue of gay marriage and all that. We're talking about more practical things here. But if you love your kids and you want to raise them to follow the Lord and you don't want them literally taken away from you, do your part to stop this. Do your part to speak up and stand up and speak up. Try to talk to your pastor, your leaders, to try to address this kind of stuff. Try to take more of a stand. Try to take more of a stand on who we should vote for. I'm sorry.